FNAF Survival Logbook released 6 years ago and contained puzzles to get the 2 names of the most important characters. The 5th missing child that possesses Golden Freddy, who some theorize to be the one you should not have killed, and the crying child, whose importance in the story is still debated to this day. Today I am here to announce that I think I might have solved it. Seriously. We're not wasting any more time, so please subscribe and turn on notifications so you get notified when the biggest FNAF video ever, over 24 hours long and a whole year in the making, going over literally everything, FNAF the Supreme Guide, releases in just a few weeks. I don't know when this video comes out as I'm saying this, and let's get into it. Although before we begin, a giant disclaimer that this is just a theory. Feel completely free to disagree with me and not take these possible answers at all. I just happen to get the solution and personally think that it works pretty well, so of course I'm gonna share it. This is just a theory. Please, let's keep this community positive. Anyways, let me catch you up real quick. So shortly after FNAF 6 released and seemingly ended the original story, the Survival Logbook released. Itself being basically a children's activity book containing things like quizzes, would you rathers, drawing grids, etc. However, on the first page it's revealed that this logbook was actually owned by Michael Afton himself, and so we knew we were in for some lore reveals. Mike notes that his recent dreams are of Nightmare Fredbear, confirming he's the player of FNAF 4, that he actually connects with and parallels Clara from The Immortal and the Restless, and with all the FNAF 3 imagery and the fact Clara quote-unquote burned down the house, seemingly hinting that he's indeed the FNAF 3 guide as well, even having a real value code which proves that the book takes place in modern times. However, that's not all. Throughout this logbook we also learn of 2 other spirits inhabiting the book, whether literally or not. One writing in faded text to someone else altering the text, writing multiple times throughout things like "Do you remember your name? Who are you? And what's your name?" hinting that we're meant to get the names of these 2 spirits within the logbook. Very quickly we discovered that one spirit is the crying child, hinted at via the "Does he still talk to you?" text next to the Fredbear plush, as well as other hints, and that the other was the 5th missing child who possesses Golden Freddy, hinted at via the gravestone drawing having my name written on it by Faded only a few weeks after we got the final FNAF game, with an ending literally containing a name hidden on a gravestone for the 5th missing child. Fast forward to June 4th, and MatPat released a game theory about the logbook, asking us to help him solve this thing after providing us with numbers that throughout the logbook are either in the wrong places or noted in red as important, those being 52, 39, 15, 7 and 2, grabbing the new numbers from the chalkboard 5 plus 4 for 9 and the 3, 10 and 11, and finally 8, 11. Then later that same day on the Game Theory subreddit, user DPowerful1 figured out that you need to insert these numbers into the word search grid instead of the Foxy Grid, giving us 5 across 2 down for C, 3 across 9 down for A, 1 across 5 down for S, 7 across 2 down for S, 9 across 3 down for I, 10 across 11 down for D, and finally 8 across 11 down for Y, to create the name Cassidy, the name of the Golden Freddy spirit. Finally, it was solved. However, that then left the Foxy Grid unfinished, and there's clearly something there with the faded out ABC on the top left. Years later, the powerful duo on Reddit, Godzilla and Wolfie, shared their joint attempt at it. Some of Cassidy's questions to Crying Child were not responded to, but there were a few that actually were. Does he still talk to you was responded with "I can hear sounds." The party was for you was responded to with "It was for me." What do you see was responded to "I can't see," which using the page numbers for the questions got 75, 103 and 59, which in putting it into the Foxy Grid gave us 7 across 5 down to get E, 10 across 3 down to get V, and 5 across 9 down to get A. Then finally they predicted that the random tally marks throughout were to be used to get the final letter, totaling to 47, and getting the letter 4 across and 7 down N to create the name Evan. However, just like MatPat said in his video, despite not being a bad theory or anything, the method does end up breaking on the 4th letter, and they end up using an entirely separate system to get it, which feels like the wrong thing to do, as for Cassidy it was using the specifically marked numbers throughout, aka only using one method. This then led the community to collectively wave the white flag and quite honestly give up. A lot of people, like me, not even trying to go back at it in the future because we felt like everything was already tried. This has allowed the puzzle to remain unsolved for 6 years, and therefore the crying child has gone unnamed for 9 whole years. This is where I come in. Last year I, along with some friends, tried solving the Foxy Grid in the logbook again. One of my copies for the logbook had what seemed to be an F10 down, which the only way to get that was to have the grid be 15 by 15 instead, which the numbers do fade out completely at at 15. However, after checking a few more copies, it turns out it hardly even exists there, and is very faded out to the point that no one else has really gotten it, leading me to the conclusion that it's actually just a part of the background image of the same color, and just so happens to fit a box by coincidence. I then tried to reverse engineer getting Garrett, which is assumedly the crying child stand-in's name in the movie like Abby is for Elizabeth, but I couldn't find a solution either. I then wrote in my Supreme Guide script that one day I may come back to it and try to solve it. Anyways, it's been a whole year since I wrote that, because that video turned extremely massive, and so I returned to the logbook recently. This time, I decided to do what I've done here and go back through the old solutions, seeing if we missed anything, and it always ticked me that the 3 letters E, V, and A seem to work perfectly fine, but then the 4th just doesn't. The method of using the pages that Cassidy asks questions that are the only ones in the whole book to actually get replied to makes so much sense to me. She asks a lot of questions, yet only 3 get replied to, so surely that means something. Also, notice how the numbers begin fading at 10 and are fully gone by 15, meaning that the only necessary rows are actually the first 9, which just happens to fit every single coordinate for EVA. Then it hit me. Something Altered writes in the logbook is I'm scared, which in the past was linked to the tally marks for some reason, but what if instead it actually links back to Cassidy asking, do you still have dreams? Right above a picture of the nightmares, who we heavily theorize Crying Child would have seen at some point. A stretch? Sure. But then notice how I can hear sounds, which link back to E, it was for me, which linked back to V, and I can't see, which linked back to A, which are also all answers to Cassidy's questions, all happen to come from the same end of night quizzes together, including I'm scared, also an answer to one of the questions. It would be weird for 3 of the only 4 answers to matter, right? So what happens when you use the page number of the question, 41, for 4 across on the first row in the Foxy Grid? You get, oh, D. Well, great, another failed attempt that literally just says Evad, which isn't a real name, right? Yes, right, that's not a real name. So I went back through the book to look for any more hints, and I noticed that throughout the book a certain word keeps coming up. After each night's work, we ask that you take a moment for self-reflection. Reflect on the things in life that you are most thankful for. Reflect on the happiest day of your life. Reflect on the meaning of your dreams. And a bunch more activities all to do with reflecting on your life, looking back on things, a bunch of self-reflection quizzes, as well as a giant damn mirror, which is where Cassidy asks the crying child, what do you see? And is on the direct opposite page of where we solve Cassidy's name. But why am I bringing this up? Well, it got me thinking about the solution I got, and what happens when you put a word in a mirror reflection? It goes back to front, and the word is reversed. So what would happen when you put EVAD into a mirror? It turns into DAVE. Dave, the crying child's real name. These 2 pages right next to each other give us the answers to both names, and a full conversation. Who are you? It's me, Cassidy. What is your name? What do you see? Dave. All of the questions Crying Child later answers have bloodstains on them. All of the answers come from the same end of night quizzes. All of the reflection stuff hints at reflecting something, and the 2 names are both solved directly next to each other. To me, this seems pretty solid. Unlike Evan, this code doesn't break the method for the final letter, and actually remains consistent for each, making use of the final answer we get from the crying child that was seemingly responding to nothing, and it also makes use of the constant reminding to reflect throughout the book. I know some will have an issue with I'm scared being an answer for do you still have dreams, but the fact that it's specifically above the image of nightmare, which Mike himself categorizes here under a dream, and the fact that none of the other questions are even somewhat possible to be the question he's responding to, it seems to be the right one. But wait, haven't we heard the name Dave somewhere else before? Yes, we have. Multiple times, actually. Going release order, and in the Silver Eyes, a book which was released directly after FNAF 4. William Afton uses a disguise to hide from the public that he's the same guy. This disguise being Dave Miller. But why did he pick Dave? Well, we actually learn in the Silver Eyes that something other than the murders happened at Fredbear's family diner. Quote, they were together, just the 2 of them. And it must have been before everything. Before Fredbear's went wrong. Before anyone was dead. Then throughout the series we're reminded that the murders all happened at Freddy's. Whatever happened at Fredbear's was a separate event that was bad, and bad enough to cause the location to close down. To me, this pretty clearly sounds like the big bite also happened in this timeline. So if the crying child's name is truly Dave, this would then mean that William was literally using his dead son's name to disguise himself. That's insane. If you believe that Mike is under the alias of Fritz in FNAF 2, being fired for the the same reasons as Mike in FNAF 1, and that he's indeed the guard at the time, then that's another Afton who uses a dead person's name as their alias, like father, like son. Also, in the Tales from the Pizzaplex story The Mimic, there's a kid named David, the son of someone who works on the animatronics, who just happens to carry around a plush toy everywhere he goes, to the point that the Mimic continued to mimic it even after his death. Look, I'm not saying he's a crying child stand-in, but could possibly be a narrative parallel. Also in the FNAF movie, there's a drawing of a kid named David whose mum is holding a party balloon, this being the only drawing on this wall to actually have a name for the child who drew it. The funny thing about this is that after I actually went ahead and did the simple thing of searching FNAF Logbook Dave, I found out that I'm not actually the first person to get this answer. I know, I'm shocked too. I 100% swear on everything that I got to the solution on my own, and literally up until this very point in the script I thought I was the only one who got Dave. But it turns out that it was pointed out as a possibility years ago, although after the Evan solution got debunked, for some reason those same people assumed that it meant the whole method was debunked, when no, it was just the final letter. All in all, I believe the word hidden in the Foxy Grid is Avad, which gets reflected into Dave, making the crying child's name Dave Afton, or David, depending if Dave is a nickname. Like Game Theory used to do, getting some real world facts into this, and Dave was actually quite a popular name back when he would have been born, being charted as the 3rd to 5th most popular male baby name between 1970 and 1980. The name Dave or David also means beloved, which considering most assume Mike's whole character arc starts from the regret of killing his brother in the games, and the movie goes out of its way to show how much he cares about his brother, it would make sense that he's beloved. Speaking of the movie, some people claim that the crying child's name is Garrett, which is his name in the movie. However, I don't think this is the case, mainly because Elizabeth's name was changed to Abby, which is just an anagram of and a reference to baby, and despite me saying it's a nickname for Elizabeth in my movie breakdown, it isn't actually a common nickname. And honestly, it's that uncommon that I'm almost certain Scott did not do that intentionally. The only reason I even thought Abby was a nickname for Elizabeth in the first place is literally because of a single website that comes up after a single Google search, saying that it's apparently true. Genuinely, that is the only reason I ever claimed that. Also in the same movie, William uses a different alias, Steve Raglan, instead of his pre-existing and canon alias, Dave Miller. Even in the novel trilogy, the name of Golden Freddy's spirit is a kid named Michael. Yes, Michael. And a kid named Jeremy doesn't even exist. These are different continuities. They have things all over the place, yes, even names. So I personally just do not think that Garrett is meant to be the crying child's real name, whether it's actually Dave like I'm suggesting or not. Now only one mystery remains: the tally marks. Seriously, what on earth are these for? I do have one idea that I'm personally sticking with that I'll get into later after I share my past attempts at it, but being completely honest, even I'm not 100% confident in my final conclusion on that specifically. And considering it's just a bunch of 5s and a single 4, I really don't know how you can get anything real out of this. I've tried so many things with this code specifically that I'm going to quickly go over for you guys, before I go into what I actually think it's for, so you can check off these ideas as attempted, or maybe you'll think of something I've not and add onto it. First, I attempted to use the number of the tally to get a word from the same page, or if it's a double page, the other side, which got me to you from working end, which seems quite close to being something honestly, but it ends with end, which doesn't make much sense. Also, some have said it's actually architect instead of end, making it to you from working architect, but that's the 4th word, not the 5th, which the tally on that page is 5. Also tried with the first letter of the words, got nothing. Incorrect. Second, I tried to match it to how many nights Mike would have completed in all of FNAF, which only equal to about 32 nights, even if Mike is the night guard in all the games. The tally number raises to 39, however. Incorrect. Third, I then noticed these images are actually shared between the Freddy files and the logbook, so I decided to try cross-referencing the numbers between the two books by going to the page in the Freddy files that's the same page the tally was found in the logbook, and then going to the 4th or 5th letter depending on the tally number, and this literally never worked, and in retrospect, of course it didn't. Also tried with just the first letter of the words, got nothing. Incorrect. Fourth, I then tried literally just thinking what seems similar between all the pages I I cross-referenced, or what could be confirmed by going back to them, which almost got somewhere honestly, since it was the page of Beware Foxy, whose mask Mike wears in FNAF 4, which would confirm he's the Foxy bully 100%, the hallucinations Mike sees in FNAF 1, possibly connecting them to the crying child in some way, Nightmare Fredbear, again confirming Mike is the FNAF 4 player, but then it all breaks apart when the final two numbers go to Toy/Withercheeka's gameplay page, which has no real significance to Mike, and Jeremy Fitzgerald's paycheck page. Incorrect. Fifth, I then tried using the word search and Foxy Grid to quite literally get anything useful from those numbers, by doing the page the tally was found as the X position, and the tally number itself as the Y position, and vice versa too. Nothing worked. Incorrect. And quite honestly, the attempts ended there because I really don't see where these tallies are meant to go. I did think after trying all these attempts, however, that maybe it's a whole lot simpler than we all think. I remembered that all of the tallies put together equal to 39, and I've come to the conclusion, despite how it may be disappointing to some, that the whole point of them may have actually been to lead us back to page 39 itself, thinking we'll get a secret, which would then lead you to realize, oh wait, there's actually two page 39s here, and then you'd begin the Cassidy search. This seems like a cop-out though, right? Well, do remember that the search for Cassidy only started due to the ABC found on the Foxy Grid, which also remember, didn't even end up being used for Cassidy's name at all anyways, meaning there'd have to be another way to get a hint that we're meant to investigate these random numbers to get a whole other name that's got nothing to do with the Foxy Grid and the solution for that. Also notice how this page 39 happens to be the page which features the gravestone with my name on it, connecting to the fifth kid instead of the crying child, which also happens to be the first mention in the logbook that we're searching for their name too, and also happens to be about moving forward instead of reflecting back like we're told all throughout this book, further showing it's different to the other name. If the tally equaled to anything else but 39, I wouldn't believe this for a second, like you probably don't. But since literally all of the tallies are groups of 5 besides a single one just to make the number 39 instead of 40, honestly makes me think this conclusion isn't too far-fetched. Also, with that in mind, notice how there's only 7 sets of the 5 tallies, and Cassidy's name happens to be 7 letters long. So maybe, just maybe, the tallies were actually the real way we were meant to notice that some of the numbers had actual significance, being how we were meant to start the hunt for her name specifically. This would then unfortunately mean that the 2 hardest puzzles in FNAF history were actually quite simple instead, just connecting the final crying child answer to a Cassidy question for the final letter, like the rest were already doing, and simply reversing it for the crying child's name like it hints to do, and then the tallies being how we figured out we could get Cassidy's name via the other random numbers in the book, just like the one it redirects us to. Oh my god. Also, because besides that, honestly, assumption, I really don't know what else the tallies could be for, nor what they'd even reveal. Who knows, one day I might come back with I solved FNAF's biggest mystery, again. But for now, there we have it. My solution and theory, please remember this is just a theory, to the Foxy Grid and therefore crying child's name, Dave Afton, with the tally marks possibly being the real incentive that was accidentally skipped in favor of the Foxy Grid to start the Cassidy search and for us to start taking note of the weird numbers throughout. But what do you think of all of this? Will you be calling the crying child Dave Afton from now on, or do you disagree with me and have found something that disproves my solution? Either way, I hope you all enjoyed and at least had some fun learning about this rabbit hole that I've been going down with this. I hope this starts some discussion about the logbook again, especially those tallies, instead of people just disregarding it forever, and please prepare yourself for the biggest FNAF video I've ever made that is over 24 hours long, and is for the entire community, whether you just joined or have always been here and want to refresh your memory on things. FNAF The Supreme Guide, officially releasing in a few weeks, depending on when this video releases. I have no idea as I'm saying this. When it's out, please share it around and just support it as much as you can, because I've spent a whole year on this thing. Let me know what you think about all of this. I hope you all have a great day or night. Please remain positive in this community, even if people disagree with your theories or whatever, and I'll see you all soon. Bye!